Hello, this is a series in which every chapter of the whole NCERT Biology book of 11th and 12th class will be covered in audiobook format. Alfonso Corti. Alfonso Corti, Italian anatomist, was born in 1822. Corti began his scientific career studying the cardiovascular systems of reptiles. Later, he turned his attention to the mammalian auditory system. In 1851, he published a paper describing a structure located on the basilar membrane of the cochlea containing hair cells that convert sound vibrations into nerve impulses, the organ of Corti. He died in the year. In this video, the chapter 16 of class 11 biology book, that is digestion and absorption, will be narrated. So, sit back, relax, and let's listen and learn. Chapter 16. Digestion and absorption. Food is one of the basic requirements of all living organisms. The major components of our food are carbohydrates, proteins and fats. Vitamins and minerals are also required in small quantities. Food provides energy and organic materials for growth and repair of tissues. The water we take in plays an important role in metabolic processes and also prevents dehydration of the body. Biomacromolecules in food cannot be utilized by our body in their original form. They have to be broken down and converted into simple substances in the digestive system. This process of conversion of complex food substances to simple absorbable forms is called digestion and is carried out by our digestive system by mechanical and biochemical methods. General organization of the human digestive system is shown in figure 16.1. Digestive system. The human digestive system consists of the alimentary canal and the associated glands. Alimentary canal. The alimentary canal begins with an anterior opening, the mouth, and it opens out posteriorly through the anus. The mouth leads to the buccal cavity or oral cavity. The oral cavity has a number of teeth and a muscular tongue. Each tooth is embedded in a socket of jaw bone, figure 16.2. This type of attachment is called thecodont. Majority of mammals including human being forms two sets of teeth during their life, a set of temporary milk or deciduous teeth replaced by a set of permanent or adult teeth. This type of dentition is called diffeodont. An adult human has 32 permanent teeth which are of 4 different types: heterodont dentition, namely incisors, I, canine, C, premolars, PM, and molars, M. Arrangement of teeth in each half of the upper and lower jaw in the order I, C, PM, M is represented by a dental formula which in human is to 1 to 3 to 1 to 3. The hard chewing surface of the teeth, made up of enamel, helps in the mastication of food. The tongue is a freely movable muscular organ attached to the floor of the oral cavity by the frenulum. The upper surface of the tongue has small projections called papillae, some of which bear taste buds. The oral cavity leads into a short pharynx which serves as a common passage for food and air. The oesophagus and the trachea, windpipe, open into the pharynx. A cartilaginous flap called epiglottis prevents the entry of food into the glottis opening of the windpipe during swallowing. The oesophagus is a thin, long tube which extends posteriorly passing through the neck, thorax and diaphragm and leads to a J-shaped bag-like structure called stomach. A muscular sphincter, gastroesophageal, regulates the opening of oesophagus into the stomach. The stomach, located in the upper left portion of the abdominal cavity, has 4 major parts: a cardiac portion into which the oesophagus opens, a fundic region, body, main central region, and a pyloric portion which opens into the first part of small intestine, figure 16.3. Small intestine is distinguishable into 3 regions: a C-shaped duodenum, a long called middle portion jejunum, and a highly called ileum. The opening of the stomach into the duodenum is guarded by the pyloric sphincter. Ileum opens into the large intestine. It consists of cecum, colon and rectum. Cecum is a small blind sac which hosts some symbiotic microorganisms. A narrow finger-like tubular projection, the vermiform appendix, which is a vestigial organ, arises from the cecum. The cecum opens into the colon. The colon is divided into 4 parts, an ascending, a transverse, descending part and a sigmoid colon. The descending part opens into the rectum, which opens out through the anus. The wall of alimentary canal from oesophagus to rectum possesses 4 layers, figure 16.4, namely serosa, muscularis, submucosa and mucosa. Serosa is the outermost layer and is made up of a thin mesothelium, epithelium of visceral organs, with some connective tissues. Muscularis is formed by smooth muscles usually arranged into an inner circular and an outer longitudinal layer. An oblique muscle layer may be present in some regions. The submucosal layer is formed of loose connective tissues containing nerves, blood and lymph vessels. In duodenum, glands are also present in submucosa. The innermost layer lining the lumen of the alimentary canal is the mucosa. This layer forms irregular folds, rugae, in the stomach and small finger-like foldings called villi in the small intestine, figure 16.5. The cells lining the villi produce numerous microscopic projections called microvilli, giving a brush border appearance. These modifications increase the surface area enormously. Villi are supplied with a network of capillaries and a large lymph vessel called the lacteal. Mucosal epithelium has goblet cells which secrete mucus that help in lubrication. Mucosa also forms glands in the stomach, gastric glands, and crypts in between the bases of villi in the intestine, crypts of Lieberkühn. All the 4 layers show modifications in different parts of the alimentary canal. Digestive glands. The digestive glands associated with the alimentary canal include the salivary glands, the liver and the pancreas. Saliva is mainly produced by 3 pairs of salivary glands, the parotids, cheek, the submaxillary submandibular, lower jaw, and the sublinguals, below the tongue. These glands situated just outside the buccal cavity secrete salivary juice into the buccal cavity. Liver is the largest gland of the body, weighing about 1.2 to 1.5 kilograms in an adult human. It is situated in the abdominal cavity, just below the diaphragm, and has 2 lobes. The hepatic lobules are the structural and functional units of liver, containing hepatic cells arranged in the form of cords. Each lobule is covered by a thin connective tissue sheath called the Glisson's capsule. The bile secreted by the hepatic cells passes through the hepatic ducts and is stored and concentrated in a thin muscular sac called the gallbladder. The duct of gallbladder, cystic duct, along with the hepatic duct from the liver forms the common bile duct, figure 16.6. The bile duct and the pancreatic duct open together into the duodenum as the common hepatopancreatic duct, which is guarded by a sphincter called the sphincter of Oddi. The pancreas is a compound, both exocrine and endocrine, elongated organ situated between the limbs of the C-shaped duodenum. The exocrine portion secretes an alkaline pancreatic juice containing enzymes, and the endocrine portion secretes hormones, insulin and glucagon. Digestion of food. The process of digestion is accomplished by mechanical and chemical processes. The buccal cavity performs 2 major functions: mastication of food and facilitation of swallowing. The teeth and the tongue, with the help of saliva, masticate and mix up the food thoroughly. Mucus in saliva helps in lubricating and adhering the masticated food particles into a bolus. The bolus is then conveyed into the pharynx and then into the oesophagus by swallowing or deglutition. The bolus further passes down through the oesophagus by successive waves of muscular contractions called peristalsis. The gastroesophageal sphincter controls the passage of food into the stomach. The saliva secreted into the oral cavity contains electrolytes and enzymes, salivary amylase and lysozyme. The chemical process of digestion is initiated in the oral cavity by the hydrolytic action of the carbohydrate splitting enzyme, the salivary amylase. About 30% of starch is hydrolyzed here by this enzyme, optimum pH 6.8, into a disaccharide, maltose. Lysozyme present in saliva acts as an antibacterial agent that prevents infections. The mucosa of stomach has gastric glands. Gastric glands have three major types of cells, namely I. Mucous neck cells which secrete mucus. 2. Peptic or chief cells which secrete the proenzyme pepsinogen, and 3. Parietal or oxyntic cells which secrete HCl and intrinsic factor essential for absorption of vitamin B12. The stomach stores the food for 4 to 5 hours. The food mixes thoroughly with the acidic gastric juice of the stomach by the churning movements of its muscular wall and is called the chyme. The proenzyme pepsinogen, on exposure to hydrochloric acid, gets converted into the active enzyme pepsin, the proteolytic enzyme of the stomach. Pepsin converts proteins into proteoses and peptones, peptides. The mucus and bicarbonates present in the gastric juice play an important role in lubrication and protection of the mucosal epithelium from excoriation by the highly concentrated hydrochloric acid. HCl provides the acidic pH 1.8, optimal for pepsins. Renin is a proteolytic enzyme found in gastric juice of infants, which helps in the digestion of milk proteins. Small amounts of lipases are also secreted by gastric glands. Various types of movements are generated by the muscularies layer of the small intestine. These movements help in a thorough mixing up of the food with various secretions in the intestine and thereby facilitate digestion. The bile, pancreatic juice and the intestinal juice are the secretions released into the small intestine. Pancreatic juice and bile are released through the hepatopancreatic duct. The pancreatic juice contains inactive enzymes, trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, procarboxypeptidases, amylases, lipases and nucleases. Trypsinogen is activated by an enzyme, enterokinase, secreted by the intestinal mucosa into active trypsin, which in turn activates the other enzymes in the pancreatic juice. The bile released into the duodenum contains bile pigments, bilirubin and biliverdin, bile salts, cholesterol and phospholipids, but no enzymes. Bile helps in emulsification of fats, i.e., breaking down of the fats into very small micelles. Bile also activates lipases. The intestinal mucosal epithelium has goblet cells which secrete mucus. The secretions of the brush border cells of the mucosa along with the secretions of the goblet cells constitute the intestinal juice or succus entericus. This juice contains a variety of enzymes like disaccharidases, example, maltase, dipeptidases, lipases, nucleosidases, etc. The mucus along with the bicarbonates from the pancreas protects the intestinal mucosa from acid as well as provide an alkaline medium, pH 7.8, for enzymatic activities. Submucosal glands, Brunner's glands, also help in this. Proteins, proteoses and peptones, partially hydrolyzed proteins, in the chyme reaching the intestine are acted upon by the proteolytic enzymes of pancreatic juice as given below. Carbohydrates in the chyme are hydrolyzed by pancreatic amylase into disaccharides. Fats are broken down by lipases with the help of bile into the end monoglycerides. Nucleases in the pancreatic juice acts on nucleic acids to form nucleotides and nucleosides. The enzymes in the succus entericus act on the end products of the above reactions to form the respective simple absorbable forms. These final steps in digestion occur very close to the mucosal epithelial cells of the intestine. The breakdown of biomacromolecules mentioned above occurs in the duodenum region of the small intestine. The simple substances thus formed are absorbed in the jejunum and ileum regions of the small intestine. The undigested and unabsorbed substances are passed on to the large intestine. No significant digestive activity occurs in the large intestine. The functions of large intestine are I. Absorption of some water, minerals and certain drugs. 2. Secretion of mucus which helps in adhering the waste, undigested, particles together and lubricating it for an easy passage. The undigested, Unabsorbed substance is called feces enters into the cecum of the large intestine through ileocecal valve, which prevents the backflow of the fecal matter. It is temporarily stored in the rectum till defecation. The activities of the gastrointestinal tract are under neural and hormonal control for proper coordination of different parts. The sight, smell and/or the presence of food in the oral cavity can stimulate the secretion of saliva. Gastric and intestinal secretions are also, similarly, stimulated by neural signals. The muscular activities of different parts of the alimentary canal can also be moderated by neural mechanisms, both local and through CNS. Hormonal control of the secretion of digestive juices is carried out by local hormones produced by the gastric and intestinal mucosa. Calorific value of protein, carbohydrate and fat, boxed item not for evaluation. The energy requirements of animals and the energy content of food are expressed in terms of measure of heat energy because heat is the ultimate form of all energies. This is often measured to as calorie, col, or joule, J, which is the amount of heat energy required to raise the temperature of 1 g of water by 1 degree Celsius. Since this value is tiny amount of energy, physiologists commonly use kilocalorie, kcal, or kilojoule, kJ. 1 kilocalorie is the amount of energy required to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram of water by 1 degree Celsius. Nutritionists traditionally refer to kcal as the calorie or joule, always capitalized. The amount of heat liberated from complete combustion of 1 g food in a bomb calorimeter, a closed metal chamber filled with O2, is its gross calorific or gross energy value. The actual amount of energy combustion of 1 g of food is the physiologic value of food. Gross calorific values of carbohydrates, proteins and fats are 4.1 kilocalories per g, 5.65 kilocalories per g and 9.45 kilocalories per g, respectively, whereas their physiologic values are 4.0 kilocalories per g, 4.0 kilocalories per g and 9.0 kilocalories per g, respectively. Absorption of digested products. Absorption is the process by which the end products of digestion pass through the intestinal mucosa into the blood or lymph. It is carried out by passive, active or facilitated transport mechanisms. Small amounts of monosaccharides like glucose, amino acids and some electrolytes like chloride ions are generally absorbed by simple diffusion. The passage of these substances into the blood depends upon the concentration gradients. However, some substances like glucose and amino acids are absorbed with the help of carrier proteins. This mechanism is called the facilitated transport. Transport of water depends upon the osmotic gradient. Active transport occurs against the concentration gradient and hence requires energy. Various nutrients like amino acids, monosaccharides like glucose, electrolytes like Na+ are absorbed into the blood by this mechanism. Fatty acids and glycerol being insoluble, cannot be absorbed into the blood. They are first incorporated into small droplets called micelles, which move into the intestinal mucosa. They are reformed into very small protein-coated fat globules called the chylomicrons, which are transported into the lymph vessels, lacteals, in the villi. These lymph vessels ultimately release the absorbed substances into the bloodstream. Absorption of substances takes place in different parts of the alimentary canal, like mouth, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. However, maximum absorption occurs in the small intestine. A summary of absorption, sites of absorption, and substances absorbed is given in Table 16.1. The absorbed substances finally reach the tissues which utilize them for their activities. This process is called assimilation. The digestive wastes, solidified into coherent faces in the rectum, initiate a neural reflex causing an urge or desire for its removal. The ejection of faces to the outside through the anal opening, defecation, is a voluntary process and is carried out by a mass peristaltic movement. Disorders of digestive system. The inflammation of the intestinal tract is the most common ailment due to bacterial or viral infections. The infections are also caused by the parasites of the intestine like tapeworm, roundworm, threadworm, hookworm, pinworm, etc. Jaundice. The liver is affected, skin and eyes turn yellow due to the deposit of bile pigments. Vomiting. It is the ejection of stomach contents through the mouth. This reflex action is controlled by the vomit center in the medulla. A feeling of nausea precedes vomiting. Diarrhea. The abnormal frequency of bowel movement and increased liquidity of the fecal discharge is known as diarrhea. It reduces the absorption of food. Constipation. In constipation, the feces are retained within the colon as the bowel movements occur irregularly. Indigestion. In this condition, the food is not properly digested, leading to a feeling of fullness. The causes of indigestion are inadequate enzyme secretion, anxiety, food poisoning, overeating, and spicy food. PM. Dietary deficiencies of proteins and total food calories are widespread in many underdeveloped countries of South and Southeast Asia, South America, and West and Central Africa. Protein energy malnutrition, PEM, may affect large sections of the population during drought, famine, and political turmoil. This happened in Bangladesh during the Liberation War and in Ethiopia during the severe drought in mid-80s. PEM affects infants and children to produce marasmus and kwashiorkor. Marasmus is produced by a simultaneous deficiency of proteins and calories. It is found in infants less than a year in age, if mother's milk is replaced too early by other foods which are poor in both proteins and caloric value. This often happens if the mother has second pregnancy or childbirth when the older infant is still too young. In marasmus, protein deficiency impairs growth and replacement of tissue proteins, extreme emaciation of the body and thinning of limbs results. The skin becomes dry, thin and wrinkled. Growth rate and body weight decline considerably. Even growth and development of brain and mental faculties are impaired. Kwashiorkor is produced by protein deficiency unaccompanied by calorie deficiency. It results from the replacement of mother's milk by a high-calorie low-protein diet in a child more than 1 year in age. Like marasmus, kwashiorkor shows wasting of muscles, thinning of limbs, failure of growth and brain development. But unlike marasmus, some fat is still left under the skin. Moreover, extensive oedema and swelling of body parts are seen. Summary. The digestive system of humans consists of an alimentary canal and associated digestive glands. The alimentary canal consists of the mouth, buccal cavity, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum and the anus. The accessory digestive glands include the salivary glands, the liver, with gallbladder, and the pancreas. Inside the mouth, the teeth masticates the food. The tongue tastes the food and manipulates it for proper mastication by mixing with the saliva. Saliva contains a starch digestive enzyme, salivary amylase, that digests the starch and converts it into maltose disaccharide. The food then passes into the pharynx and enters the esophagus in the form of bolus, which is further carried down through the esophagus by peristalsis into the stomach. In stomach, mainly protein digestion takes place. Absorption of simple sugars, alcohol and medicines also takes place in the stomach. The chyme, food, enters into the duodenum portion of the small intestine and is acted on by the pancreatic juice, bile and finally by the enzymes in the succus entericus, so that the digestion of carbohydrates, proteins and fats is completed. The food then enters into the jejunum and ileum portions of the small intestine. Carbohydrates are digested and converted into monosaccharides like glucose. Proteins are finally broken down into amino acids. The fats are converted to fatty acids and glycerol. The digested end products are absorbed into the body through the epithelial lining of the intestinal villi. The undigested food, feces, enters into the cecum of the large intestine through ileocecal valve, which prevents the backflow of the fecal matter. Most of the water is absorbed in the large intestine. The undigested food becomes semi-solid in nature and then enters into the rectum, anal canal, and is finally egested out through the anus. Thank you for tuning in. Give this video a thumbs up if it was helpful and subscribe for the upcoming videos. Check out more videos from the playlist. Also comment down if you have some queries or suggestion.